again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Daily December 2019, day 10. Now, I'm a couple days behind by now, so I'm going to take some of my own advice and just turn on the camera and start talking about something. I one of the things I will sometimes do, and for daily December, is I'll just talk about whatever's on the top of my head, and sometimes that's something like disability rights or portrayal of mental illness in media or myths about mental illness. Things that I want to get a message across, and those are great, and it's a great thing to do. If you are running dry on ideas, is just talk about something you're passionate about, or something that you don't think a lot of people know. However, for this one, I'm simply going to talk about something I like, because I like it. And some people may not like what I like, and that's perfectly fine. And some people may not like the reason I like it, or may think it's flawed, my logic on why I like it. It doesn't really matter. I like it. It's fun to me. And that's all that matters. So, what I'm going to talk about today is Sword Art Online. Now, for those of you that are anime fans, this will probably give you one of two reactions. One, oh, I love that show, or two, you weeb, shut up, that show is horrible and it's just for weeb trash. Go find yourself a real anime. And if all of this sounds weird to you, Sword Art Online is an anime, and it's specifically an adaptation of a manga, which, if you don't know, is basically a Japanese comic book, though calling it that doesn't quite do it justice. If you get a chance, find a manga. If you can't read Japanese, find it in English. Just read one. They're unique. Not saying that comics are lesser or anything like that. They're just different experiences, is all I can say. Both are really great. But the manga and the later anime series is started under the premise of, what if a video game was real? Which we've heard this a billion different ways. But I just personally enjoy this version of it. And this version of it is, in the future, this guy develops this technology called full dive technology, where you put a helmet on, you say Link start, and then what happens is you are just inserted into the video game, the epitome of virtual reality. And so in the real world, you're lying on a bed, but in the game, you are 100% there. You can feel things, you can touch things, you actually move around, and you use your own body without actually endangering it. So in conjunction with this full dive technology, this dude Akihiko Kayaba releases a game called Sword Art Online. And at launch, there's only 10,000 copies available. So it becomes this big deal. 10,000 people get in. They all log in on launch day and find out that they can't log out. Fast forward, an hour or so in anime time. This all happens in the first episode of the anime. The people playing the game find out that they can't log out, and then they find out that the game has now become real. In the idea that if they die in the game, the helmet that they're wearing will use microwaves, which is what it used to communicate with their body. Ignore science. But it will use microwaves to destroy their brain. So if you die in the game, you die in real life. Also, if anyone tries to remove it or tamper with them at all, they'll also die. So there's no way out except to complete the game. And the game is based on, there's this dungeon that has 100 floors. You start on level 1, and you have to climb every floor. Each floor has a boss. And as you climb higher and higher, eventually you reach the 100th floor. And if anybody beats the boss on the 100th floor, everybody gets to leave the game. So that's the premise. The main character, his avatar's name is Kirito. However, his real name is Kazuto Kirigaya. And Kirito is described as a beta tester of the game, so he had some prior knowledge of it. And throughout this series, he becomes Superman, basically. He's Neo. Without going into too many spoiler details, he gets a special skill that only he has, which is dual wielding. And he's able to use it to eventually free everyone. And the manga goes on after Sword Art Online. They have a second MMO called Alfheim Online, which isn't a death game anymore, but there's other stakes involved in that. And then they go to a kind of a futuristic sci-fi MMO called Gun Gale Online, where you use guns, and somebody in the game figures out a way to kill people in the game and in real life, and then it finally goes, it keeps going. And the biggest criticisms of the manga and the anime are, first of all, it's kind of a harem anime, or harem anime, which basically means Kirito has literally every girl in the game wants to be with Kirito, and he constantly has to kind of fight off the affection of all these different women for different reasons. And one of the things I enjoy is they have a bunch of Sword Art Online video games, and invariably in the games, because you'll be able to play as yourself and generally be able to bring other people with you as allies, or you'll play as Kirito. 90% of your allies are all ladies. So that's one of the criticisms, is just, well, this one guy is just constantly surrounded by women, and all women fall in love with him in some way. Even his sister, which is really weird and is a Japanese thing that I don't understand. So that's one of the arguments. The second one is, again, Kirito is pretty damn close to a the male version of a Mary Sue. He's a character that just never loses. Um, and while some of his exceptional abilities are explained away by things like he was a beta tester, so he had a couple extra months compared to everyone else to train and learn before the game got serious, which is a big deal. Um, but for the most part, he's always the most powerful. He's always the most skilled, and he always wins against everyone. Even in a game where he transfers into Gun Gale Online, and he's using an entirely new system. He doesn't get to use his twin swords anymore. He has to learn how to use firearms and stuff like that. He still ends up owning everyone because he figures out a way to use a sword in a gun game. So a lot of the criticisms have merit. And there's other minor ones, well, not minor, but different ones. Things like the girl that he does enter into a relationship and eventually marries, Asuna, is a really badass character, and in the first story arc in Sword Art Online. Then the second story arc, she's just a damsel in distress, and every story arc after that, she's just really lame, except for Mother's Rosario. And she loses all the kind of cool badassness simply to be, the thing that Kirito has to protect. So I mean, there's a lot of criticism for it. A lot of it is valid. Do I think the writing is perfect? No, but the thing I like about it is I play MMOs. I started playing World of Warcraft in vanilla, which is before the first expansion came out. In 2000, I think 6 is when I started playing. I have an active subscription right now because I jumped back in for about a month. I need to cancel it because I'm not playing anymore. But I played that for I think 6 years without lapsing. It's either 5 or 6 years without lapsing in my subscription, and I did everything. I did leveling and professions and PvP, though I really sucked at PvP. And I started doing endgame raiding. Like, I loved World of Warcraft. And ever since dropping it, I've found new MMOs that I really enjoy. Right now, Final Fantasy 14 is my new one, where I'm starting to do endgame raiding and all the really fun stuff in an MMO. I've done Elder Scrolls Online, Terra, Neverwinter. Fun fact, Neverwinter, I was one of the first group of beta testers for Neverwinter. And Star Wars, The Old Republic, I was in I think like the first, second, and third beta test before it went live. MMOs are my thing, and I played a lot, like the Old Republic. I played for I think 2 or 3 years, all the way from launch, all the way through the free-to-play stuff. I was a leader in the guild. Other games I've been in guilds before. I've started my own guilds less than successfully. Like, I'm really into MMOs, and what Sword Art Online gets right is treating all the games like MMOs. They use the right jargon for the most part. To give you an example, there's a movie called, I think it's Whiplash. I'm going to check really quick here. Make sure I'm thinking of the right movie. Yep. So there's a movie called Whiplash. About it has J.K. Simmons as this band director of an elite college jazz band, and Miles something Miles Teller. There we go. Plays this freshman that tries to get in as their drummer. I started playing jazz when I was in the sixth grade, and I continued all throughout high school, through college. I was in a professional jazz band. I know jazz. I love the jazz world. Um, Whiplash is not a jazz movie. And then if you want, I mean, you can look at people that are actually still in the jazz community, whereas I have kind of fallen out of it as I've fallen out of everything. But Whiplash is a sports movie that uses jazz as their sport, and they get a lot of things right. Like, they have the right terminology for the most part, but they'll use it wrong. Like, one of the examples that irks the hell out of me is they're playing a piece in a bizarre key signature. It's a bass 8 or a time signature. If you have no idea about music signature time signatures, there are two numbers you have to worry about on a time signature. It tells you how the measures are laid out. The most common is called 4/4 or common time. It means there are four beats in a measure, and the quarter note is how you count beats. So there are four quarter notes in every measure. Another very common time signature is 3/4. It's also called a waltz time, because that's what a waltz is. There are three beats in every measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. They were playing in I believe it was 8. Oh no, it was 7. I think it was 7/4 or 7. Oh, 7/8 time. That's what it is. So there's 7 beats in a measure, and the eighth note gets is your beat. It's not an uncommon time in jazz and a lot of things, but it's not 4/4 or 3/4. So it's a little bit weird. When J.K. Simmons counts them off, because it's 7/8 time, generally if you were to count off someone to start a song, like in a 4/4 song, you probably go, ready, a 1 2, a 1 2 3 4, play. He would go 5 6 7, and then they'd have to come in for 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So you go 5 6 7. That's not how you do it in jazz. Technically, yes. The last half. I mean, you can give a 3 4 boom and start, but everything in music is generally done in multiples of 2 or 4. It's very weird. Like, you'll have signatures in that have odd numbers, like 5/4 time and stuff like that, but you'll still count them in 4s or 2s. You generally don't lead on a 7. And even if it is a 7-beat measure, you will subdivide it into something that's 3 or 4. You never use a number higher than 4. There's no real reason behind it. It's just how it's done. Like 9/8 time is counted as 3/4 time with triplets. So it's little things like that make the movie just seem off, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to someone that knows. He'd count the time wrong, or he'd say jazz phrases that were just that little bit off because he was using the wrong words and didn't understand what he was actually saying. and how it's worked. And going back to Sword Art Online, they don't really do that. They talk about monster spawns and you know grinding and leveling up and DPS and all these terms that real gamers use. In the conversations between players, despite the fact that they, like in the first arc, they are locked in a fantasy world that works completely and doesn't have to involve the outside world at all. And yet they still speak to each other in game turns. Watch out, the durability on that's almost gone. You know, stuff like that. And it feels right. You know, the dialogue feels like real the dialogue I would have with a friend in an MMO. And some of the dialogues they've had in the game, I have had. And they'll talk about stat distribution and stuff in later things and ability scores. All this stuff, again, doesn't actually add to the plot at all, but it makes it feel realistic to people that actually play MMOs. So as much as I don't like what they did to Asuna's character, I liked her as this super badass kind of warrior woman that she was in the first arc, and shows up again in a couple places, but for the most part is kind of put to the side for her to be a damsel in distress. I don't like that. I like her as a badass. I'm not a fan of the fact that 90% of the characters are females that most of their motivation is they want to get with Kirito, despite the fact that they're all friends with Asuna, whom he's married to in a couple of the games. So, I mean, yeah, there's issues, but it feels real in just the little things, you know? The talking about monster spawns and grinding, to talking about all this stuff that if you've never played an MMO, sounds like technobabble from Star Trek. Fun fact, when they were writing the scripts for Star Trek, they would actually have, in the first draft of it, they would just have like technobabble. Like they had consultants that would actually write out, you know, stuff about, you know, neutrons and positrons and, you know, reinforcing the warp field and all. They had experts that actually made sure all that sense for that stuff for the most part made sense. But the actual script, it would just say, you know, tech jargon or something like that. When it was first written, because the writers didn't know all that stuff. And so to a lot of people, they hear all this, you know, random talk about MMO stuff, and it just sounds like technobabble to get this story going. But those are real conversations that people have in MMOs. And if I was trapped in Sword Art Online, I would have those conversations. And some of those story plots are things like having to get a rare material so you can forge a special sword. That happens all the time in MMOs, and low drop rates, and, you know, super hard bosses that are hiding really good drops and stuff like that. All that stuff happens in MMOs, and I love MMOs. So yeah, that's why I like Sword Art Online. Like I said, it's not written perfectly, but it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's a world I understand. If you don't like it, that's great. If you like it, that's great. But yeah, hopefully it at least kind of explains why I kind of latch onto that. And I latch onto it to the point where I think, I'm not 100% sure, I believe I own every Sword Art Online game that has been released, mostly because they've all been released on PC now, and in the US. For a while, a lot of the games would just stick to Japan. But I've owned all of them. I've beaten 3, and I'm working on a fourth right now. Just because, again, I really like it. My one issue with Sword Art Online is every game but one you play as Kirito, and I want to play as my own character that gets to fight with Kirito and everyone else, but I don't want to be Kirito. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of his character itself. He's overpowered. His motivation is lacking at best. And as much as, yeah, it's kind of cool to have every girl in the world interested in me, it's not believable. Like, it's not believable for anyone, and for me personally, yeah, girls don't look at me that way, and never have. So it takes me out of the game when all the girls, all the very attractive women, by the way, are fawning over my character. It's just, no, it's a little too much. Don't mind a little romance, like maybe one or two characters for a love triangle you have to choose between. Fine with that. Literally, I'm not kidding. The main cast, I believe there's, I think, 8 or 9 women of just the core cast. All of them want to get in Kirito's pants. All of them. And they even have episodes of the anime, and they have it in the games too, to a much higher degree, because, you know, fantasies. They even have the dialogue in the anime where the girls are literally arguing with each other about, it's not fair that Asuna gets Kirito. I want to be with Kirito. No, I want to be with Kirito. No, I want to be with Kirito. And then they all just kind of laugh about it. It's like, oh dear God. And there are other male characters. There's Klein and Agil. Klein is single, but he's the stereotypical blumbering, oh, there's girls around, I have to woo every one of them, and turns out to be more annoying than anything else, and kind of chauvinistic to a point. So he never gets anyone, and Agil is married. So obviously, and his wife doesn't play the games, so obviously he doesn't get with anyone. Those are the only two dudes in the entire world. Every so often you'll see a male show up for an episode or two, but literally Kirito, only dude in the world, and every girl loves him. Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, I love Sword Art Online. I've been watching the newest series. My biggest issue with it is I haven't been able to find a dub of it anywhere, and the double vision is so bad that reading the English subtitles is super hard, and sometimes I can't even make it through an episode before it just becomes gibberish to me. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little rambling I had about a stupid anime that I really love and rewatch constantly. Anyway, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.